Hi, I'm Commissioner Nancy Jester, and welcome to another edition of Nancy Jester Reports for Tuesday, July 23rd, 2019. Today we had your Board of Commissioners meeting, and we had a lovely inspiration, I would like to say, from Josh Cusick from the Fraser Center. He actually had some very inspirational words about folks living with disabilities in DeKalb, and he said that I think 7.6% of DeKalb lives with a disability, and again, very inspiring words, and I appreciated the message he had to bring to the Commission and things that we can do to certainly make living with a disability easier in DeKalb County. So I will also point out that my staff reminded me that this weekend was the 23rd anniversary of the Olympics in Atlanta, and of course we've all seen that it's the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 mission that landed on the moon. So I also enjoyed last week. I want to say, give a shout out to North Lake Senior Apartments. I got to speak with the seniors living there and discuss county things that are going on at the county's agenda that we're working on, and also City Council member Ann Lerner of the City of Tucker was there. It was great to be with her. She is one hardworking public servant. So again, I really enjoyed being there. Thank you for the invitation, and always great to see Ann Lerner. Let's see. So today we had a number of appointments we first handled, some to the Historic Preservation Commission and one in particular that I want to discuss with you, which is the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities Region 3 Advisory Council. We have a number of open spots on this particular board. It does have some very specific qualifications. So if you're interested, if you think you might have the credentials and qualifications to serve on, again, the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities Advisory Council, drop me a quick note at njester@dekalbcountyga.gov, and we'll send you back the list of qualifications. And if it's something you're interested in, then you can forward your resume, and we can see if we can get you in the process for that. It's not an appointment I can solely make, but we can get you in that process. So they're certainly looking for folks there. Again, we made a number of appointments to the Historic Preservation Commission in DeKalb County. We had a number of fairly standard procurement issues. Let me see if there's anything of note that I think was interesting. And we took in some grant monies as well for various judicial programs. We did have one of the things that I talked about in the last video that I want to reiterate. We're going to have a public hearing at our next meeting which is the floodplain management regulations, so that we're in compliance with the National Flood Insurance Program and other metropolitan area standards. So I know that sounds not as interesting for everyone, but this has a lot of implications for property owners. So please take a look at this particular item on the agenda. Usually in my newsletter we have the agenda, and you can see the links in there and click on any of the documents. At our next Board of Commissioners meeting, we'll be having a public hearing on that. Ditto for an ordinance amendment to our erosion and sediment control ordinance. So please take a look at that and let me know any thoughts you have. And feel free to come to the public hearing. You can give public comment at that time. Again, we went through a number of items, particular procurement items that went to committee. So we'll be reviewing various things in committee. I will say, we had a number of items we heard at last week's Public Works and Infrastructure Committee. That's a committee I sit on, that we approved. And I'd like to point out our very fine use, I think, of the internal auditor, still paying great dividends to the taxpayers of DeKalb County. This is something you, the taxpayer, the voters, approved in 2015, that you created the Office of the Internal Independent Auditor, and we are using them on our large dollar procurements in DeKalb County so that we can make sure T's are crossed, I's are dotted. Were there any places we could save, any questions we could ask, to make sure the processes of our procurement department were followed with fidelity, and just everything looks squared away when we go to review the procurement as a commission and then approve it. And for instance, we had a low bid procurement where we were buying water meters, and we went from, I think, $21 million that we were going to let on a contract. We took it down to $8 million. So while I don't want to confuse anybody. It's not that something was going to cost us 21 and now it's going to cost us 8. What we did was we were able to shrink the dollar amount, though, in that contract, so the department has less bandwidth. They only have this much money they can spend. So, so I think that's a good thing. It just keeps everything constrained and in its proper volume, if you will. So when they're looking to buy these water meters, we think that $8 million, based on the review of our audit department and looking at real needs and justifying that contract, we could only justify an $8 million award versus a larger award that may or may not have been spent, but the point is now we've constrained that spending. So that's a real win based on our use of the auditor. And I always want to thank the voters of DeKalb County for their wisdom in making sure we had the independent auditor put in place in DeKalb County. We are saving millions of dollars because of that. So thank you to the voters. Let's see. We have approved some sidewalks and bike lanes and street projects, road widening projects, and various other public works issues. Let's see. We approved a resolution to go into our transit component that will end up in our master transportation plan. So our transportation master plan, comprehensive plan. So we approved that, and that we discussed last week. Let's see. I want to get back to this in a minute. Let's see. We approved our housing and urban development program, the consolidated plan. That's this big particular document that I had here. This is a document about how we will spend those federal dollars that we get from the housing and urban development department. And we do a lot of blight remediation with that. So that's an important thing we do. And in fact, I think we passed our blight resolution in this particular agenda. Yes, our blight inventory. I'm sorry, not our blight resolution. We'd already done that. Our blight inventory survey. So that's something we will be doing. But in our HUD monies, we are doing things to remediate blight, knock down buildings, as well as do other positive development things. So I think that is worth noting. What I will note is as we're getting closer and closer to the beginning of school, I know that personally I've spoken a lot about the overcrowding that is particularly prevalent in North DeKalb. My district runs all the way from Tucker through Dunwoody. So I have, again, discussed in great detail that I think we need to have some different options for North DeKalb rather than just trailers and no real plan for addressing that when we have a lot of schools as we exit the northern part of the county that have seats available. And so I think that the proper thing to do would be redistrict, and I've talked about that publicly. But one of the things that I want to make sure as we are building schools and we are looking at, we often need these portable classrooms there, and we need them sometimes, right? But we don't need them forever. For instance, their lifespan is 15 years. We've got trailers that have been at schools longer than that. So that's not a temporary solution anymore. One of the things I'm doing is beefing up and working with the commission to beef up our building codes so that we can apply these to the school district and make them create a higher quality product, protect the life, safety, and health of children, and really mitigate and force the school district to mitigate and reduce their use of trailers, at least in the unincorporated parts. And I hope that the cities will join me in beefing up their building codes. Looking at everything from really limiting the amount of time a portable or temporary classroom can be placed somewhere, to more stringent regulations on their placement, to tree preservation ordinances so that we can protect the land, the very small amounts of land that we have some of these school campuses on. So we are continuing to perfect that. We're continuing to look at some model language from other jurisdictions around us where they are already doing this. And again, I hope that the cities in DeKalb County will join the county on this, because I think we could really leverage improvements in the school district's ability to manage their physical assets if we are all in agreement and do this together. But that was deferred because we're still working to perfect that, and so we'll be talking about it more in August and September. So I just wanted to let you know the status of that. And that pretty much sums up our day today at your Board of Commissioners meeting. So stay in touch. We'll be right back here next week with your next edition of Nancy Jester Reports.